All right, let's talk about volumetrics, specifically about fog. Now, before we get into anything, I just want to say that I am by no means a professional 3D artist like Ian Hubert, Max Hay, Blendiger, CG, Cookie, whoever it is, not CG Cookie, sorry, CG Matter. Any of those tutorial guys, I'm not them, right? But I have watched tons of their videos, tons of other tutorials, and I know a fair bit about Blender. And I've come up with a cool technique for fog, and I want to show it to you guys. I'm not saying that this is also the best and only way you should ever do fog ever again. You should always do whatever looks good for your scenes. But this is just a cool and interesting way that I have come up with. I haven't seen anyone else do a video on it before, but Anyway, with that said, let's get into it. Right. First, I want to look at a few examples. Real world fog examples you should always pull for reference, right? You should always pull from reference. There's only three main things I want to highlight about these photos. First one here is just the natural kind of like gradient fall off of our visibility, right? Closer to the camera, we can see things more clearly, like this tree, and the further away we get from our scene, the further away we get into our scene, into the distance, it becomes harder to see, and the visibility is quite poor, right? Anyway, objects close to the camera have less fog, and the ones further back are almost invisible. All right, cool. That's number one. In our second example, we have almost the opposite effect, where the fall off isn't gradual; it is much sharper. It's like an exponential curve. Just skyrockets in thickness in the fog. That's the only thing I just wanted to point out, that sometimes the fog can come in quite quickly, and your view isn't as gradual of a gradient, basically. All right. Third example is just about how light works in our scene. With fog. And what we can see here is basically we have a sunlight, from the sun. And it is lighting up our fog. We have a bright spot here from where the sun is coming from. And in the corners where the sun isn't reaching, it is very dark. And it is also adopting the colors of the environment, the screeny kind of, foliage and bushes and grass and canopy of the trees. It's adopting a bit of a green tinge to it, right? It's like a dark bluey kind of dark green. Okay, so those are the three main things I just wanted to point out. We should always pull from reference, like I said. And with that all being said, I think we can start building our scene. Now, let's get started. We're going to hit Shift A and drop in a cube as you would with any other scene. And we're going to drag it up so that it covers our entire scene. I'm also going to squash this in the Z a bit, just scale down in the Z axis. And then I'm going to move it up just slightly so it's like still below our scene, but not like, too below. Just a smidge below, right? Okay, perfect. Now, first thing, object properties, viewport display, and we're going to hit this to bound so we can see inside and select objects inside of it. And now we are going to go to our shader window, our shader editor. We're going to click on our cube and hit new material. And we're going to delete the principled BSDF and hit Shift A and add in a volume, principled volume. You can obviously hit Shift A and search, or you can just go to shader and get a principled volume from here. All right. So we're going to plug this into the volume. Perfect. And now when we go into rendered view, I am on the Cycles rendered engine. So this is why my fog's going to look like this. If you're on Eevee, I don't know what it's going to look like. I've never tried this in Eevee, but if it works, then it works. If it doesn't, then try it in Cycles. All right, so we have our scene here. We have a big giant square of fog. And normally this is where other tutorials would end, and they would just say, you know, play with your density, make it like 0.1 or 0.0, 0.05, 0.04, whatever it is. And then you would go into your camera view, and this is what it would look like, which, you know, nothing wrong with this. If this looks good in your scene, then that's fine. Then just go with that. You know, the simpler, the better, right? But with a little bit more work and effort, we can make something that looks a little bit more interesting, I think. We are now going to try and get this natural fall off, right? So I already said it earlier, we set gradients. We are going to hit Shift A, go to texture, and add in a gradient texture. We're going to hit the factor into the density, and now this changes what our cube looks like, or our fog. And you can see how on this side we have this hard edge of fog, and on this side we have a much more like gradient kind of, you know, it's kind of fading out. That's because if we plug this factor into the surface, which will preview what our node is doing, you can see the black value here and the white value here. And that's perfect for us, because that essentially is telling our density value to go from 0, which is black, so no fog, to 1, which is white, which is, you know, full fog. So that's perfect. But now obviously we need to be a much more gradual kind of fall off. One way to do that is to hit easing. This gives you a much more, you know, much more like gradual kind of gradient. But easing isn't really enough, and I prefer to just leave this on linear. All right, so the first thing what we're going to do is also address this issue where our camera is over here and our fog is going from left to right, and we don't want that. We want it to go from, you know, behind our camera to in front of our camera, right? So there's two ways to do that. One, you can just rotate it in the Z and just do that. Perfect. The other way is to make sure that you have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled. Go to Preferences, Add-ons, and search Node, enable Node Wrangler, and just click on the texture and just hit Control-T, and you will get these two nodes. And once you have these two nodes, you can then go to your rotation on your Z and just hit -90 degrees. You can also, if you want, go to your Y and hit 90 degrees if you want this to go from top to bottom, or bottom to top rather. You can also just rotate it. Like I said, you can just rotate it in the Z, the X, the Y, you know, whatever. However you want your cube to look, it's fine. We're done with this part right now, so we're just going to leave that as is at -90. Now, to control the actual gradient, we would normally take a color ramp and start messing, as you can see, with the handles, the positions, and the color. You can make it darker, you can make it brighter. You can also change this to like ease or cardinal or B-spline looks quite good sometimes. You know, that would be a really nice look for our fog. It would give us a nice like natural, you know, it doesn't really work actually now that I preview it. Oh, it's because we haven't plugged it into the density. But there you go. That would give us like a very like gradual kind of slope, which is exactly what we're looking for. But if you want to control it with a color ramp like that, that's fine. I want to make this a node group at the end, so I can't use color ramps because they don't have inputs for control points for these like handles and colors. So we're going to use something else. We're going to hit Shift A and go to Converter and choose a map range. Take our factor, put it into the value, and our result will go into the density, and we will also preview it. With Node Wrangler, you can also hit Control Shift and click on your node to preview it instantly like that. You know, you can just click on all your nodes and it'll automatically preview it. So here we go. We got our map range, and we're going to set this to smoother step. And as you can see, that gives us more of that kind of ease and B-spline look, which is exactly what we want. But also these control points, which have inputs, basically work like the position of our handles, except unlike a color ramp, if you see a color ramp, it can only go to 0 and 1 maximum. Our values here allow us to go further. We can go to like infinite basically. And we can also go into the negatives. Not that we really want to do that, but it is something that we can do, right? We can also mess with these control points, but we're going to mostly focus now on the from max and to max, or we're not going to focus on it now, we're going to focus on it later. First, just like our color ramp, we had controls for our colors. We want that functionality into our node group at the end. So what we're going to do is go to Shift A, color, mix color. I'm going to take the result and plug that into the factor, and then our result of our mix color is going to go into the density. And then once that's plugged in, just go into the surface. You can see both these colors are the same color, so that's why our cube looks like this now. We're just going to go onto A, make this black, and B, make this white. And there you go. It's back to normal. Perfect. All right. So that's almost everything done. We have just a couple more nodes, 3 nodes, in fact. I'm going to disconnect that quickly. What we're going to do is add in a shader volume scatter, and we're going to add in a shader mixed shader. And we're going to plug our principal volume into the top here, and our volume scatter into the bottom. Plug that into the volume, the mix shader into the volume there. Sorry, I just really like these lines to be flat. We're going to take our result here from a mix and plug that into the density as well of our volume scatter. And then our last node is going to be a math node. So just Shift A, go to converter, and then add in a math node. We're just going to drop it here for now. And we're going to select everything from our mix shader to our texture coordinate and hit Control G to group it into a node group. Perfect. So now we can start plugging in values into our group inputs, which will then make them visible on the outside of our node group, which we can then edit those values from the outside without having to come in and, it just makes everything look cleaner, right? All right, so the first things that we're going to do is take our input here and just plug it into the 2 color values on our mixed color. We're then going to take the anisotropy from both our principled volume and our volume scatter. Make sure they're in the same one. We don't want 2 anisotropy values. We want the same one to control both. We are then going to plug in our from max on our map range. And we're going to take this from max and also plug it into the top value of our math node. And now that we've done that, we're going to plug this into the to max. We're also going to change this to multiply and hit this to number 3 on our value, which is going to make that number 3. So it's multiplying by 3. And then our last 2 that we're going to add is we're going to take our factor from our mix shader and then drag this back here and just plug in our rotation for our map range. Not our map range, sorry. I'll just tell mapping node. Sorry. Okay, now with that done, we can hit N on our keyboard to open up the N panel here. Go to group, and we are going to change the color, the name of our color, A. We can change this to density low. We can change this to color 1. We can change this to A. We can leave it as A and B. Whatever you want to name this doesn't really matter. You at least know that this is the colors for your density. Anisotropy is fine. We're going to leave that as is. From max, we are going to change the minimum value here to 0, leave the default value, and we're going to change the name of it to range. Our factor here for our mix shader, we're going to change the default value to 0, and we're going to change the name to volume blend. And then rotation is fine. We'll leave that as is. And that is everything done for now. The only other things that you might want to do is you can add in more control points if you want. You can control the multiply value here. You can name this as let's say range multiplier. You can change this to like 5. 5 looks good sometimes. 10 even looks good. But I leave this at 3 because 3 is good enough. It doesn't need to go any more than that. You can also add in the from min here if you would like. This just controls like where the start of the dark value like starts basically. I just leave this at 0 because you can also just drag your fog, your cube, and just make it start wherever. So that one's not too important. The only other thing I think is you might want to plug in the colors of your volume scatter and your principal volume so that they controlled by the same node. You can do that. You can also just make this. I just make this like 0.7, and then you can click and drag the color down into this one to make it the same color. But if you would like to have this color here, you can then like make it whatever color you want, essentially, which can give you some cool like effects and looks. But I'm just gonna leave it at 0.7 on both of them, 0.7 white. All right, so that's our node right there. Like everything is done. Like that's it. So let's mess around with some of these values, some of these sliders, and see what we can get. So I'm just gonna go to my camera view here. I'm gonna make this a bit smaller so that we can make the view a bit bigger. There we go. So this is what it looks like by default. And actually, you know what I'm going to do quickly is unplug this and just add in a shader. I'm going to go with the principal volume for now. And we're going to add in a mix shader quickly. You don't have to do this. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. I'm going to drag this one down to here and this one into here. And then I think I just need to drag this up and down a bit. There we go. Now it's reset. So we have these two shaders, right? We have our principal volume, and this is the node group that we've made. Right now I've got the mix shader set to our shader, and our values are 0 and 1, right? So now we can mess around with these quite a bit, right? We can say like, oh, we want to start with a little bit of fog here. So we can say like at the start, our fog is going to be 0.01 thick, right? Which isn't very thick at all. Then we can change our maximum. Instead of being at 1, we can change this down to like a lower value that's more, visually pleasing. Let's say like 0.13. And then we can mess with the range, which will then control like where or how far back our fog kind of starts to blend in. So we can put this at like 0.3, or sorry, not 0.3, 3. So I'm going to put this at like 3 right there. There we go. And then let's set this color here to the same value, which is 0.7. And our density, let's say we'll use the first value, the dark value, right? We'll say 0.01, sorry. So that's the same value here, 0.01. And so let's compare the results, right? So this is our shader. This is what it looks like right now. And if we make it the principal volume, this just does not look great at all. On a low value, it just doesn't really look that good at all, unfortunately. I can't even, it just makes it look like there's just like a gray kind of like overlay on it, and it doesn't look like fog, right? So let's do the opposite, right? So this is again our shader. So let's take a look at this value. It's 0.13. So there we go. We got 0.13 of density on our principal volume. And let's compare the results now. Okay, now this is just way too thick. Light is barely coming in, right? And now we can fix that because we can mess with the anisotropy values. But right now, just at standard, 0.13 0.13. It's way too thick. We can barely see anything. It doesn't look too bad if this is like a very foggy kind of like scene that you're trying to go for. This looks okay. There's nothing wrong with this, but right now for what we're trying to do is it's just, it doesn't look right. It's too thick. It's light's not really coming in, and we need to change it, right? So let's set this back to our shader, and we're going to set the anisotropy at like 0.6, okay? And this is what it looks like on 0.6 anisotropy. Set this back to 0 so you can see. We have light coming here, and we have like dark values here, but when we put this at 0.6, it is exaggerated a lot more. We have a much brighter light here and a much darker kind of like shade to our fog on this side. And that's exactly what it looked like in our third example. We even got a blue tinge coming in here from our ambient light. And now if we set the anisotropy to 0.6 for our principal volume and change it, not much has changed. You know, this has gotten a little bit brighter, which is great. And this has also gotten a little bit darker, and that blue tinge is also starting to come in. But it's just not really, it's still too thick. It's still way too thick. We can't even see the two objects at the back. You know, we see this one, and this one. And, you know, we're getting the right effect. Like this one's more visible than this one and this one. And then we can't even see the ones further back than that. But it's not really like, it's just too thick, because now if we take this down to like 0.05, yeah, we got that, again, that look where this one's more visible than this one, and this one. But now it's not thick enough. It's just, again, like almost that gray overlay is being applied to it. So let's go a little bit higher, like 0.08. And yeah, I guess this isn't looking too bad, but again, it's starting to get a little too thick, and our light is starting to suffer. If this looks good in your scene, there's nothing wrong with just using your principal volume. Like I said earlier, you know, if that's what looks good, the simpler the better. Just keep it like that. However, if we start to play around with these values a lot more, we can start to get like much better looks. Like, you know, at 2.2 on the range here, we can barely make out this object here. We can see this one. This one's a lot more visible, and then these two are like really visible. And again, we can control exactly how visible they are by making this color black, which basically again says that right at the beginning there's no fog whatsoever. Or we can add quite a bit of fog if we want. So we can make this quite thick at the start, you know, 0.6 of the value here. And then we can mess with the range a bit more. You can drag this up a lot more, and you know, there we can see quite a bit of this one. Drag that range back a bit, and now it's like almost gone. In my opinion, this just looks way better. And look, our lights isn't really suffering as much with the much higher values on our fog. From the side view, it looks like it's just one kind of, you know, thickness, but you know, we can see clearly right here that this one's visible here compared to this one even. This one's like almost invisible. So there is definitely a varying like amount of thickness in the fog that we have created with this setup, which is exactly what we're looking for. All right, well, that's about it for the tutorial. That's about it. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys learned something. I will have the blend file available on Gumroad for download. If you use the fog in your projects, please let me know. Just add me on like Instagram or something. My Instagram is at MLNS3D. The tag will be up on the screen now. I'd love to see what you guys do with it. If you guys use it in your projects, I'd love to see how creative you can get with it. If you like the video, please hit like and please subscribe for more tutorials. I don't know how many I will do in the future. I am working on some other kind of shader things. But if you have questions about Blender, please drop them in the comments and I might do a video on them. I'd love to help any people, especially if you're new. I'm like still learning myself. Obviously, I'm learning things every day. And if what I can learn, helps you, then that's great. If we just keep helping each other learn this program, learn 3D, and get better at it. That's always going to be fun. All right, so yeah, just let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Maybe, you want to learn how to do like water. Maybe you want to learn how to do like something else. I don't know. Just drop in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Anyway, so thanks for watching. Yeah, I hope you guys have fun making some cool art. Can't wait to see it.